In-depth coverage of the top stories and breaking news when it happens. News Radio 1080 KRLD.
With nearly half of marriages ending up in divorce, it may be surprising to know only about less than 5% of marriages actually have a prenup agreement. And, buried under more relevant news, understandably, last week, something that was interesting and that was released was a news tip that Melania Trump did not immediately move into the White House back in 2016 because she wanted to renegotiate her prenuptial agreement with POTUS. On the KRLD Newsline is Jennifer Hargrave, who is a certified North Texas family law attorney. And Jennifer, with your expertise, what can you tell us about this situation that maybe a lot of other couples are also going through?
Well, the first thing that we know is they were dealing with a premarital agreement, right? Which it wouldn't come as a surprise. I think we would all expect that Donald Trump on his third marriage would have a premarital agreement. But also this tells us that Melania Trump is a pretty savvy negotiator herself. I don't think she always gets portrayed in that light, but it's, good for her. She saw an opportunity to go back and address some of the issues in the premarital agreement, maybe that, circumstances changed during the marriage. So she wanted to address that. And obviously he had a vested interest in getting her into the White House. So, they were able to have a meeting of the minds and make it all work.
When you're talking about premarital agreements, you're thinking it happens before the marriage starts. How often do these agreements get amended?
If you're going to amend a premarital agreement, it has to be done in writing with some formality, just like when you executed the premarital agreement. So it's clear that, everybody was on the same page at the same time in terms of modifying those terms. It happens. One of the interesting things that isn't discussed a lot is the use of a marital property agreement, which is an agreement that is done after the marriage. So even if you didn't have a premarital agreement, but in the marriage, you decide that you need to have an agreement in place to protect property and assets, then that is quite possible. It's something we do from time to time. So usually, again, that happens when there's a change in circumstances, right? There's something that's happening in the marriage, and this is a way for both parties to get some security in terms of staying in the marriage.
So what is fair game in a prenuptial agreement?
Well, pretty much anything is fair game, except if it's criminal or against public policy. And also, we can't address child support and really child issues in a way that's binding. Some agreements will have language that this is our intention. If we do have children, this is how, what we intend to do with them, but those are not binding on the court. Most of the time what we're dealing with is pretty routine stuff. So it's property, it's assets that you own before the marriage, assets that you're going to acquire during the marriage. And we're talking about how those get distributed, how taxes get paid, what happens upon death. You'll have an estate plan that will take care of that, but we need to make sure that's in alignment with our marital property rules. So really, what I tell people is that in the state of Texas, if you don't have a premarital agreement, that's okay. We have a body of law that will govern how your property is handled upon death or divorce, right? But a lot of people want to customize that, right? They don't want the off-the-shelf rack marriage arrangement. They really want to address specific issues. People will come up with some pretty creative things that they want to have put in there. And I always have to talk with them about, is it really enforceable? But, you have to ask if you have to have those kind of clauses in a premarital agreement, what kind of marriage are you going to have?